The seal has gone on that roadway. So again, congratulations to the staff, our roadwork crew that was based on that road. A really good outcome, and hopefully, we'll see a little bit more heavy patching down the track to finish that road totally up to a much higher standard. Also, footpaths. I've noticed a lot of work being done in Mandurama and also in Millthorpe in the last couple of weeks. With regard to footpath work, in particular repairs to footpaths. There were a lot of tripping hazards, so again, congratulations to our footpath team. There's a lot of good teams there that are working at the moment. Next is a question though with regard to the cricket nets. I noticed they were supposed to be completed by, I think it was today. Have they now been completed to the Director?
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. That's certainly my belief. That's all but, Mr. Director.
You, Mr. Mayor, the synthetic surface has been completed. There is still the rubber matting to go on the sides. And we're just about there then.
Thank you, Mr. Director.
A great asset, Mr. Mayor, to have.
Yes, it is. Those cricket nets have created a lot of conversation around town, and I know there's a lot of people looking forward to having a go at them, especially with the success of the Australian cricket team. We'll look forward to the next Australian representative out of the Blayney Shire. Any other questions or comments, councillors, in regards to the infrastructure report that Councillor Reynolds hasn't covered?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Ewan.
I'd just like to make a comment, thank you, in regard to the Beaufort Street open space. That was a fantastic effort from council and the wider community, particularly the residents in that area, that they certainly took a lot of interest in that potential and future projects, should I say, for that open space community area. So congratulate the staff in negotiating their way through that and getting the community on side, because I believe that we'll see some great ownership from the community in that community space area as it develops over the next few years. So hopefully we can secure some outside funding, to make some of those things happen up there. There's some great ideas come out for, particularly for, family-orientated sort of activities. So, thank you very much. And in regard to the cricket nets, I'm sure that the timing for that's excellent. It really, for the end of, for the summer holiday season for the school users, I'm sure they'll certainly put them to good use for an activity down there when they're not actually playing cricket. I'm sure they'll be well used, so thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Ewan. Councillors, any other questions or comments regards to this report? If not, I will put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Page 44, item 12, maintenance of effluent infrastructure. There's a title. Recommendations 1 and 2. Councillors who have a mover for this recommendation. Councillor Reynolds has moved that way. Councillor Newstead has seconded that. Any questions or comments, councillors? We've been out there and had a bit of a look at our... Yes, Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, it's a bit of a surprise that Cadia is turning off the tap to take the water, particularly in the middle of a drought. But where one thing closes down, other opportunities are hopefully going to emerge, and water is probably one of our most precious assets. So hopefully we can get this Section 60 application lodged and processed reasonably quickly, so that we are able to reutilise that water either for industry or for our sporting fields and parks, etc., hopefully in the near future. So a good start, and of course we had to get the ponds up until we can actually get that Section 60 application through to get those settlement ponds operational. So again, congratulations to the staff for moving so quickly to get those ready, so when the tap is turned off in the next few days, we can actually move that water through those ponds and get it back out into the globular system in a reasonably good shape. So congratulations, but hopefully an opportunity will emerge that we can actually reuse what is going to be a very precious commodity and continues to be a precious commodity.
Thank you very much, Councillor Reynolds. It is a great opportunity to look at what we can do with that water into the future, and I certainly commend the staff for that initiative. Any other questions or comments on regards to this report? Councillor
Yeah, thank you,
Ewan.
Mr Mayor. Can I just ask our director, that water that Cadia was taking off our hands, so to speak, once we've put it through the system, I guess that would be ideal water to use for some of our, while the dry conditions continue, for some of our roadworks where we need extra water to actually, for compaction and the like, on our gravel roads and the like. Would that be correct?
Through you, Mr Mayor. Look, we hopefully would be through the drought by the time that occurs. There is a significant process to go through with regards to an approval and with regards to developing up the project and actually constructing the treatment facilities that would be required before we would be allowed to use that water for whatever it may be.
Thank you, Mr Director. Thank you, Councillor Ewan. Any other questions or comments before I put the motion? I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Councillors, now move through to page 47, item 13. King George Oval Project Capital Expenditure Review. Do I have a mover? Councillor Kingham has moved that way and Councillor Denton has seconded that. Councillors, any questions or comments in regards to this item? Councillor Kingham.
My understanding is that the Director of Infrastructure has come up with this catchy slogan. Is that correct, Grant?
Through you, Mr Mayor, yes.
Yeah, I reckon it's terrific. I reckon we've been trying to come up with something that really embodies what's happening in the world today, and that's girls playing every sport that males play. And, our successful cricket team had 4 girls in it, and they're matching whatever the boys can do. And once the St Pat's ground was completed at Bathurst, it provided a double oval venue for the sorts of things that Blayney was very good at. So we could have knockout carnivals here with side-by-side grounds. But when St Pat's did what they did in Hereford Street, it sort of took wind under our sails. But the next step for us is to have something that's better than what they've got. I don't like their dressing sheds particularly. I think we can do better, and this is our attempt to do better. Just remind the councillors that this is really stage 1 of King George Oval. This is spending $1 million on basically change rooms and a few other things. It doesn't do anything for the ticket shed that needs demolishing, or the front gates, or embodying the whole of the netball precinct in the one. So while this is great, it's really the beginning of a revitalisation of the sport at King George Oval.
Absolutely. Thank you, Councillor Kingham. I couldn't agree more, and it's a good point to make. That is only stage 1. We do have a master plan for King George Oval, and there's certainly lots of other projects to do there. But as the report says, at the moment, the facility is totally inappropriate for females to use, and the fact that it's due for a bit of a refresh anyway, so it's quite opportune that we can apply for these grants and make a big difference there for the participation of females in our Shire. Councillors, any questions or comments? If not, I will put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. So now move through to page 54, item 14, minutes of the Blayney Shire Sports Council meeting held on Thursday the 21st of November. There's 1, 2, 3 recommendations there. Do I have a Councillor Kingham has moved that way? Do I have a seconder? Councillor Newstead has seconded that. Any questions or comments? Councillor Kingham?
I'd like to point out that the Sports Council came up with 2 strong recommendations for inclusion in the next funding for drought funding. The toilet block at the tennis court is totally inadequate, and they've been trying to get a fence around Dacres Oval for ages, and it hasn't happened yet. So they're playing cricket without a boundary, which is unsatisfactory, but it's been happening forever. Dacres Oval was named after Sergeant Dacre, who was a prominent sporting identity in the very early days of Blayney Shire. And I'd just like to point out that these 2 recommendations are going to be worked on, and I'd encourage councillors' support for those 2 projects in the next round of drought funding.
Thank you very much, Councillor Kingham. And as you referred to, very, very strong indication from that sports committee about their priorities, being the potential fence at Dacres Oval and upgrade or a new toilet block at the Blayney Tennis Club. Councillor Reynolds.
A question of Councillor Kingham through you, Mr Mayor. Surprised that there wasn't also a submission with regard to a toilet block at Dacres Oval. Was there any reason why the Sports Council wasn't in favour of putting in a submission for a toilet block at Dacres?
Councillor King, are you able to
It's not we're not in
enlighten us?
favour of it. I think it's one of the highest priorities, but my understanding from the General Manager was that we haven't developed a development approval for that. That could be confirmed by the staff.
Yeah, there's a fair bit of work to do before we have an understanding of location and costs of a potential toilet block there. Yep.
Is anybody working on a development application for change room? We've talked about it, but I'm not sure what progress it's up to.
Mr. Director.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Yes, the Blayney Cricket Club is doing some work on that, and it was only last week I was communicating with them with regards to progressing that. We wanted to resolve some matters with regards to the land, and we addressed that last week, and I would expect they'll probably engage a consultant in the new year to commence work on that development application and a concept plan.
So I guess the summary of that is there's still a bit of work to do before a potential toilet at Dacres Oval, where I think we'll all agree, the upgrade of the toilet facilities at the tennis courts is badly needed, and that's something that could be done pretty quickly, depending on funding. So I guess that's why the thinking was in support of this recommendation. Okay, councillors, we have mover and a seconder. Are there any other questions or comments in regards to the minutes of the Blayney Shire Sports Council? If not, I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Councillors, item 15, page 57, minutes of the Traffic Committee meeting held 6th of December 2019. Now, there's recommendations there 1 through to 5. Do I have a mover for all these recommendations? Councillor Reynolds has moved that way. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Newstead has jumped in for a seconder. Questions or comments? Councillor Reynolds, who's chair of this committee.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I'm sure another councillor will come in a minute with some questions or comments, so I'll try and give an explanation for a start. With regard to no stopping sign, recommendation number 5 on the Midwestern Highway, this is the third time it's come up before Traffic Committee. The RMS, or Transport for New South Wales as it's now known, indicated that the 10-metre sign had to be 10 metres. We could not have it within under the rules and regulations, and the director may be able to stipulate more on Rule 170. And then the New South Wales Police said they would prefer to have a sign rather than no sign to police that intersection, rather than having people maybe under, maybe over, but to actually have a clear indication. So the final recommendation after 3 attempts is that the no stopping sign on the Midwestern Highway, 10 metres north of Gold Street intersection, be approved, and that sign then be put in. A couple of the other issues that came up before Traffic Committee, in Millthorpe there's a little bit of confusion with Unwin Street and Crowson Street with regard to people not giving way at the intersection. It is a T intersection. Unwin is at the top of the T, or crosses the T with Crowson. But the problem is with Crowson, which turns into Richards Lane, is that it's dirt just past the intersection. So that's why there is some confusion. However, RMS has indicated that the road rules say that if you come to a T intersection, you must give way. So maybe some education to the local community there, that it is a T intersection, that you must follow the road rules with regard to giving way to your right and left at a T intersection coming out of Unwin Street. A couple of other issues that arose. Midwestern Highway, the Lyndhurst community asked whether RMS would look at reviewing the speed zone. It's currently 80, but they want the local community sent in a letter requesting that the 80 zone be extended to the west towards Cowra, up over the hill where there is a truck stop on either side. However, RMS says that they've already done a review only a couple of years ago, and that nothing has changed. There are no new streets or no major developments on the side streets that are active, so they recommended that the speed zones stay the same. So a letter will be sent back to the local community of Lyndhurst stating that. The railway crossing just out of Blayney on the Orange to Greghamstown Road, there was an incident with, I think it was the XPT a year or so ago. There is some funding at the moment, so we've just gone to ask John Holland Rail whether they've done a safety assessment and what the safety assessment is there, whether it does need bells or gates or anything else, or whether the current level crossing is satisfactory with state government funding available there. There's also, the community has approached two of the traffic committee with regard to the intersection of Isley Street and the Midwestern Highway at Carcoar. There's going to be some further information, so we'll wait for that one to come back to traffic committee. And also council moved to put a descent sign, I suppose you could call it, as in to indicate a very steep decline on Mandurama Road from Mandurama to Neville. So a sign, if council approves tonight, or the action is that sign will be posted if it already hasn't been posted, to indicate to trucks about that steep descent. So that's a quick summary of what happened at Traffic Committee about a week ago.
Thank you very much, Councillor Reynolds. Any questions? Councillor Kingham.
I ask staff, what is the full composition of the traffic committee? Who are the members? I mean, here we've got one councillor, one represent politicians, one for Transport for New South Wales and one police. Now, my understanding is it's not actually a committee of council.
Correct.
But surely we should have more people. And who's representing the views of the community? I mean, the decision on Lyndhurst and Mandurama are woeful. They don't represent the views of the community, and I'm appalled at some of the decisions they're coming up with, and gives me no other option but to vote against the resolution. But I would like to know what is the full composition of that committee.
Mr. Director.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, you're correct. The Traffic Committee is not a committee of council. It's a technical review committee. And those members that are listed as present at the last meeting are the voting members of that committee in accordance with the delegation that's provided to us by the New South Wales Government.
How do we get some more members of the public on that Traffic Committee meeting?
Through Mr. Mayor, members of the public are allowed to attend the meeting and make representation. Those members that are listed there as present are the voting, I'll call it block, or voting members of the committee, and obviously those others, including myself, that were present are ex officio.
Good.
We have no voting right. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Director. Thank you, Councillor Kingham. Councillor Reynolds.
Mr. Mayor, I'm happy to answer Councillor Kingham's question. I'm the representative of this council but I have one vote of 4 on the Traffic Committee, and it's interesting, some of the Sydney councils no longer have a councillor as their representative on the Traffic Committee, and no matter across the whole state, the maximum number of councillors you can have is 1 on any traffic committee in the state. On each council traffic committee, and every council has a traffic committee, but there's only 1 councillor that is appointed, and it was appointed through a vote here a bit over 2 years ago that I was the representative, and Councillor Newstead is the alternate on the traffic committee. So, and it's a statutory committee, and that's pretty well a quick explanation of where it is, but there are legal requirements, and RMS and police have certain legal requirements, and we are bound by those legal requirements. They're law. We cannot go against what is stated in law.
Thank you for that, Councillor Reynolds. Okay, councillors, any other questions or comments regards to these 5 recommendations put forward by the Traffic Committee? No? Had a pretty good go around on that. Okay, I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against?
I'm voting against this, Chairman.
Declared carried. Okay, councillors, now move through to item 16, page 61. Centrepoint Sport and Leisure Centre Major Upgrade Stage 2 Project Capital Expenditure Review. Recommendation there. Councillors, do I have a mover for this recommendation? Councillor Ewan has moved that way and Councillor Newstead has seconded that. Councillors, any questions or comments in regards to this report? Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Again, a great project, and particularly Stage 2 is going to be another part of a necessary project that we need to complete to get a fantastic facility. I do wonder, and I have asked this, but so far we haven't done it, is when we made the original decision to go ahead with the Centrepoint project, we said that we'd do community engagement, and through our Facebook and through other methods. And I was looking at our Facebook page again today, and there's been no community engagement well over 2 months on this project. So I think it's important that we keep the community engaged, because I'm getting a number of questions about when is it going to be finished, when can we actually get to it. And so...
Sorry, councillor, I'm just confirming, you're talking about the current project, the swimming pool upgrade? Is that...
I know, but I'm talking about the Centrepoint, as in the different projects that we were going to keep the community engaged, that's all. So,
oh, okay, right. Okay.
So whether it's 1 or 2, but yeah, if we could try and keep the community engaged about the first project.
Gotcha. Thank you. Councillors, any other questions or comments in regards to this item?
Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Councillor
Just a comment. I just think this is a great project in the sense that for our energy efficiencies and our carbon credits, at the end of the day, if we can pull this one off, it'll be fantastic and make the centre a very cost-efficient project and make a very cost-efficient centre up there. So here's hoping. Thank you.
Absolutely. And Councillor Newstead.
Just a quick comment. It's a shame that we can't do it in conjunction with Stage 1, because I just fear the backlash might come again when we say, oh, we've got to close the pool again to replace the roof. It's a shame we didn't have the funds to do it all in one go. But
That's exactly correct. As you know, to do it all at once would have been ideal, but certainly the budget didn't stretch to that. But there's certainly a huge priority of this council to reduce our carbon emission, as well as obviously saving money on behalf of the ratepayers. So, look, it's definitely worth. It'll be very competitive. This round of funding, very, very competitive. But I love the title, "Swimming Towards Utility Efficiency." Is that the Director of Infrastructure's? Very good.
Through you, Mr Mayor, no.
No, okay, but I did like that. Okay, councillors, any other questions or comments regards to this report? If not, I will put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Okay, this item, our Manager for Planning has declared a pecuniary interest and is leaving the chamber. Okay, thank you, councillors. I'd like to refer you to the change of the resolution or the recommendation in regards to the conditions. I'll refer you to item 2, amend the condition 23 to state the maximum number of patrons permitted in the small bar should be limited to 25 persons. Councillors, we have 2 recommendations there now. Do I have a mover for these recommendations? Councillor Newstead has moved that way. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ewan has seconded that. I might ask the Acting General Manager just to clarify that amendment.
So through you, Mr Mayor, condition 23 was specifically drafted regarding the National Construction Code and toilet provisions. The applicant has contacted council since the business paper went public to clarify that, because he'd put a submission in regarding 25 persons. That was clarified with our senior building surveyor, who advised, yes, 25 persons is change in recommendation.
From 20 to 25. Okay, Councillor Reynolds.
A question to the General Manager, and that may flag a amendment. My question is with regard to the closing time on Sunday being 4 o'clock. In reading the objections, the one objection that mentioned time was 5 o'clock. The proponent had actually stated 9 o'clock that they wanted to close 7 days a week. Why did we select 4 o'clock and not look at, say, 5 o'clock, which was where the one objection came from?
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. I think my understanding is to line up with similar cafes and facilities like this, or Mr. Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, when we were going down those lines, but each development is on its own merits. So we looked at a few others around the area, and quite frankly, there's a bit of an ad hoc basis based on different venues and their localities against residences in particular. The 4 o'clock was settled upon mainly because taking into account the submission. So whilst a different time was specified, we thought 4 o'clock was more appropriate on the Sunday. It can always be reviewed through modification down the track. The applicant was happy with that, hence the reason we proposed it.
Thank you, Mr. Acting GM.
If the applicant was happy, I won't proceed with an amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Councillor Newstead.
I was going to comment about the same thing, but as usual, got in first. But I would have even suggested 6 o'clock. I would have thought that Sunday in Millthorpe would be one of their busiest days, but as Councillor Reynolds said, if the applicant's happy with 4, we'll see how.
Absolutely, and the community's happy with 4, probably more importantly. Okay, councillors, any other questions or comments regards to this item? If not, I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Could I ask the Acting Director of Planning to come back into the chamber, please? The division is unanimous. Okay, thank you, councillors. Now move through to item page 19, erection of shed 93 Forestry Road, Millthorpe. Do I have a mover for this recommendation? Councillor Reynolds has moved that way. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Newstead has seconded that. Councillors, any questions or comments in regards to this item? Pretty comprehensive report. Pretty straightforward, all the issues considered. No questions or comments. I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Councillors, now draw your attention to page 119, item 19, installation of a new sign, 1 Water Street, Blayney. Recommendation there. Do I have a mover for this recommendation? Councillor Reynolds has moved that way and Councillor Ewan has seconded that. Councillors, any questions or comments in regards to this item? Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think in having a condition that the sign be turned off should satisfy any major concerns, and so therefore it's a win for the school community to inform, but at the same time not annoy neighbours with late night visual signage reflecting into their houses.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds, and this is certainly an example of the advantage of having a DA process. These issues can be recognised and addressed. Councillors, any other questions or comments regards to this item? If not, I will put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Councillors, now move through to page 137, item 20, 40 lot subdivision, 19A Plum Street, Blayney. The recommendation there. Do I have a mover for this recommendation? Councillor Reynolds has moved that way. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Newstead has seconded that. Councillors, any questions or comments? This was the subject of our public forum earlier this afternoon. Any questions or comments? Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors have an extensive amount of time looking at this development, and we are aware that there were a number of community objections or concerns, I suppose more than objections, with regard to a number of issues. I think in the more than 50 conditions that have been put on, that it goes a long way to meeting the concerns. And I do welcome tonight the proponent or representative from the proponent discussing the potential of a VPA to improve footpath access both to this development but also potentially along Plum Street. So we'll see whether a VPA can be developed from that so that the community as a whole can get a benefit from this development rather than just the individuals within the development. Did have some concerns about having two footpaths, one on the inside and one on the out, but in the recommendations there's only the outside footpath, which I think there is actually was an error in the one of the recommendations, that recommendation number 22 only had to lot 18, whereas I think it needed to be lot 28.
I can just interrupt you, Councillor Reynolds. I know you've moved it. We've just, and you're correct, we have had to put up an amendment, and that is to acknowledge that issue that you've just spoke to. So I do apologise for not bringing that to attention of my fellow councillors before. But as the mover, are you happy to accept that?
Yes.
Thank you. And as the seconder, are you happy to accept that? Thank you. Sorry to interrupt, Councillor Reynolds. May continue.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Green space, while it would be lovely to have a park, and there will be a retention basin proposed down in one of the corners to hold some of that stormwater, so flooding hopefully won't take place further down the street until we can get it into the main stormwater system. But having a small green space on a 39 lot would be fairly costly to council. There is a large amount of green space within a close proximity, within walking distance, and if we can get that footpath network up and fully operational, it'll mean that people can access it quite easily out of the subdivision. I would have also liked to have seen a second access, pedestrian access, but again, there is to have a further pedestrian access to any potential green space that is in operation, but it would be very costly to have that green space from a council point of view on an ongoing basis. So to not have a park is probably to the advantage of the council in the medium to long term, and there is no requirement that a park has to be provided for this size development, but there is the opportunity to develop the park spaces we heard earlier in close proximity for council in the near future. The other one was the concerns with regard to two-storey developments, but again, it was one of the recommendations has been that covenant be placed on them so that hopefully no two stories would ever be built in this development, which a lot of the neighbours are, that have written to council are concerned about. The other issue is fencing costs, but as we heard again from spokesperson for the proponent, that they've agreed to cover, including the back fences, so of the neighbours, to put in new fences at the cost of the developer rather than the residents. So it would be cost-free for those residents if a new fence went on their back fence along there, which I think is a major win again for the community, that there is no net cost to those individuals. And also the setback of being 6 metres from the back, so the back of the houses aren't looking pretty well over the fence. They're not that close to the fence. So a lot of work done by the council staff to get these recommendations, and I think they mostly cover the concerns of the community, and hopefully it's a win for the community, and that we are opening up more affordable housing, and that is a concern across the Central West, the lack of affordable housing, and this may be one opportunity to provide more housing which is smaller and more affordable than a lot of the housing stocks that we have both in our community but also in the Orange, the Bathurst area, and might encourage a few more people to relocate to Blayney and Blayney Shire, which would be fantastic as well.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Councillors, any other questions or comments? Councillor Ewan.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This development, I think, has, with the council staff and the proponent and also our councillors themselves, taking quite a deal of interest in the development itself, and I think that in itself has actually brought the development to a point where we've got it pretty good, because there's been quite a lot of community engagement and concerns out there, which I think is good to see, because it just means that we can get it as more right, or as right as possible anyway, for the wider community and for the developer, because I see this development as a partnership between Blayney Council and the developer. As it progresses, there obviously is to be a great deal of stormwater work done there to put the development to the point of a construction certificate. And also, I'm happy to see that an investigation into the sewerage requirements for the development will be carried out before a certificate of construction is also granted. So I believe that this particular development is a partnership between the proponent and council, because it is our responsibility as a council to have that stormwater facility to standard, obviously, that meets the requirements of that particular area. And I believe that the majority of the questions have been answered for the wider community, and I guess with any change we always have questions of concern. So from that part of it, yeah, it was certainly have got it to the point where it will be a great development. The concerns, I guess, about the 450 square metre block sizes by the wider community in one particular subdivision is I guess warranted for Blayney, because we haven't seen that before. We've had them dotted throughout the Blayney community, but I think the concept there certainly lends to a much more diverse residential development, in the sense that Blayney, being an ageing community, may well see quite a lot of retirees take the opportunity to build on a smaller size block, which will require less upkeep than a large block from a garden point of aspect. Also too, I think it could be a great development for first home buyers with starting out with a young family, to get them into the residential market, and then maybe see them years ahead moving on to a larger block and a larger home. So it gives Blayney a lot more diversity in what is available in block size, and more opportunity, particularly for, as I said, the ageing community, where we see retirees wanting to downsize, which then makes their homes become available, which are large homes sitting around our community, to maybe more younger families that are looking for a larger home with a larger yard area. So all in all, I think the process has been a good process to give us the outcome that we have here in front of us today. And I guess ideally, if it was possible, as Councillor Wren suggested, some open space area and a second entrance would be great. But when you look at the other areas in Blayney, and as put in the report, Maple Crescent and the like have just as many homes in their streets, with a one-way in, one-way out, so to speak. And I do like the idea, and Councillor Reynolds suggested, about the internal or the inner circle pathway. I think if that can remain, that's wonderful, because should retirees and older people choose to live in that subdivision, their mobility, and we're very keen on making sure that the mobility around our Shire is great. So the inner pathway on the centre section of the subdivision, I believe, is a must, particularly for young children and ageing people in our community, should they choose to live there. So all in all, I think both the developer and has ticked the boxes, and it's all permissible within our guidelines. So I hope that the wider community as accepting of the development as we see it here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ewan. Councillors, any other questions, or Councillor Reynolds would like to add some more commentary?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I was actually opposing the inner pathway, and the recommendation actually only states the outer pathway at this point in time. So there is no inner pathway. While it appears on the maps, the recommendation doesn't actually state that the developer has to do it, and it will also cost council in the long run a lot more money to maintain two pathways around a street. So that's the downside, but at least having one pathway and 1.5 metres wide at least would provide adequate provisions. But I suppose in the perfect world we'd love to have two pathways and everywhere, but if an opportunity to actually connect that pathway into Plum Street and into our pathway network would probably be a lot better use of those resources rather than having two pathways around that one potential street.
Thank you, Councillor Reynolds. I guess I'd certainly like to acknowledge that it is in everyone's best interest, the community, the council, and indeed the proponent, that this is a high quality modern development. It's important to note that it is permissible under LEP and that it is potentially going to fit that mix and that variety of land use that we're trying to provide in our town. I think we're going to see a lot more development in the years to come, and these issues need to be addressed and taken for what they are, and that is a very exciting time to think that there's opportunities for our town to grow. The important part of that is the diversity of land use, large blocks, small blocks. This development, while it does look for us, for town, quite medium density, the reality is that there is a proven need for these smaller blocks, and I believe it will be a great fit to the other type of different blocks that we can offer in our town. I'd also like to recognise that this, and picking up on Councillor Reynolds' comments, this proposal has developed over the last 12 months with the input of council staff. I believe it has gotten better and better, and from the presentation we've seen tonight, and again as touched on by Councillor Reynolds and Councillor Ewan, one of the proposals to develop a master plan of what type of dwelling will potentially go on those places, I think is a highlight. I think that is a really key and critical point to make, that the council or the community through their council can be assured that it will be a high quality development in that location. And as I said, I think we are going to see more and more of this development pressure in our town, and we just need to be mindful that we will need to address that development as it comes, because we are seeing it coming at us. Any questions or comments in regards to this item? Any further comments, questions? No? If not, I'll put the motion. We'll put them up. Okay, thank you, councillors. Just talking to our acting general manager. There's a couple of points that have been raised by Councillor Ewan and Councillor Reynolds in regards to the presentation that we had today in the public forum. I think probably appropriate that we may look at if this potential recommendation is putting those in as an amendment in regards to the distances, that 6 metre setback. We're just going to wait for the acting GM just to put those up, councillors. So if I could just ask the councillors to just give me a minute for that to come up, and then I'll ask the mover and seconder for their review of these possible amendments. Okay, thank you, Mr. Acting GM. Just referring to the proposed two extra amendments to the condition. So 3 being amend condition 58 to include no part of any dwelling is located within 6 metres of the rear of any new lot. And 4, new condition that the costs associated with installation of any agreed new boundary fence shall be borne by the applicant. Now, these are the points that were touched on by Councillor Reynolds and Councillor Ewan. As a mover and seconder, are you happy to accept them in the recommendation? Thank you. Any other questions or debate in regards to those extra items, or indeed the original recommendation?
Yeah, I think it actually strengthens the case, so as in to strengthen the community concerns and meet further stringent, but again with the agreements of the developer who's proposed these, so all parties should be fairly happy with that outcome.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's some great initiatives that have been put forward by the applicant. Again, I'll refer back to the master plan that they're proposing. I think that's an excellent control measure, that the community can have some confidence that what will get built there will be supportive and a value add to our town. Okay, councillors, there we have it. We have the mover and the seconder, 4 recommendations there. No other questions or comments, and I'll call a division for this, being a planning matter. I will ask for you to raise your hand. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. So that's 4-1 and 1 non-vote. Please record that as such.
Mr Mayor, that would be 2 against then.
Yes.
Because a non-vote
that's
is against.
Technically, that is correct. Didn't vote one way or another, but... Okay, I declare it carried. Thank you very much for your time and comments in regards to this very important matter. Okay, thank you, councillors. Give me a minute, I'll get to the next item. Thank you. Okay, councillors, page 200. Item 21, minutes of the Blayney Shire Access Advisory Committee held 21st November 2019. Recommendations there 1 and 2. Do I have a mover for this? Councillor Denton has moved that way. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Reynolds, second that. Questions or comments in regards to the minutes of the Blayney Shire Access Advisory Committee? Councillors, I'm sure there's some commentary around the Access Committee. Councillor Reynolds.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'll be quite brief. Big concern that came up and the recommendation there with regard to the laybacks in Adelaide Street, some access issues, I think it was Burn Street and also here at Church Street, with wheelchair access to those. So if council staff could have a look and maybe even look at moving the laybacks down the street slightly, a metre or 2 down the street, if there's an issue with facilities, etc., that we can't do them there, that maybe there is an opportunity to reconstruct those and bring them forth to next financial year, probably as a project to make the main street of Blayney more accessible. The committee was also quite keen and happy to have a look at the 10-year plan for footpaths, and very happy that council now has a 10-year plan of where we're potentially looking at building footpaths to improve access across the community. So some positive feedback, and we've actually had some extra people join the access committee, and a feeling that they've actually achieved some outcomes over this last year. So positive response from the members of the Access Committee, Mr Mayor.
That's great, excellent, because it is a very important committee of council. Councillors, any other questions or comments in regards to this item? If not, I will put the motion. All in favour? Against? Declared carried. Now move through to page 203, item 22, minutes of the Blayney Cemetery Forum, meeting held on Wednesday the 13th of November. There's a recommendation there that be received and noted. Do I have a mover? Councillor Newstead, thank you, has moved that way. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ewan has seconded that. Councillors, any questions or comments in regards to these minutes? Councillor Reynolds.
Mr Mayor, concerns have been raised with me again about rabbits. It's not just in the cemeteries, but I've heard some disturbing sort of comments about graves being impacted by rabbits, and so hopefully a strong rabbit control program is continuing. I know it's mentioned here, rabbits, but also I've really noticed coming into Millthorpe on the Victoria Road, there's about 50 rabbits, which is fairly close to the cemetery, but just up over the hill. So I'm not quite sure who's actually responsible at the entrances to our villages in trying to control rabbits, but a real big problem, because 50 little bunnies become 500 little bunnies very, very quickly. And given that's mown and sort of the trees are watered there, there's still, and it's on the side of the road. So if council could look into that particular issue, but also continue the control in the cemeteries, because there have been some disturbed grave sites, including the grave itself, the coffin has been disturbed.
That is correct. And Councillor, as you've mentioned, this has been a totally ongoing issue for many, many years, and if not rabbits, it's been wombats or kangaroos or something, but it is an ongoing problem, there's no doubt. And with the interest in our history and a lot of people attending our cemeteries around the Shire, it's important that we try to have them presented as best we can.
You are correct too, Mr Mayor. I have also heard of wombat issues, so the two together are creating problems.
They're pretty good. Okay, councillors, we're still on this report. Any other questions or comments to the minutes of the Cemetery Forum? If not, I'll put the motion. All in favour? Against? Declared carried. Councillors, page 205, item 23, report of the Centrock Board meeting and the Central New South Wales Joint Organisation meeting held 27th November 2019. There's a recommendation there that report be received and noted. Do I have a mover for that? Thank you. Councillor Ewan has moved that way. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Reynolds, thank you. Any questions or comments? I'll just make note, councillors, that we're pretty much in now, the Central New South Wales Joint Organisation, and the Centrock is very close to not existing anymore. We're just waiting a resolution of Forbes Council, because it's a 355 committee of that council to make a resolution to disband that. But for all intents and purposes, we're now functioning under the Central JO banner. There's still a little bit of work in moving contracts from the Centrock into the JO. There's a bit of an overlap, but certainly a lot of work going on in regards to that. A very successful meeting in Canberra with a lot of the senior ministers, and obviously the most conversation was around drought and their response, and our response as a region in regards to our water strategies and some of the initiatives that we've put together as a region. Especially in regards to Central Tableland's waters proposals around increasing the dam at Lake Rylands, as well as supporting the extension of pipelines in Bathurst and in Orange, and all the other initiatives that are on the table, like Wangla Dam, of course. So some substantial water infrastructure projects that are either underway or going to be studied in our region in the next year or two. Councillor Reynolds.
Mr Mayor, just back up there was fantastic news there. It was about 2 weeks ago that Central Tablelands Water has received $1 million to do a study to potentially upgrade double the capacity of Lake Rylands, which wouldn't require much of an extra expansion. I don't know whether my fellow councillor, Councillor Newstead, might be able to add some more material, but fantastic news that we're progressing that far, that quickly, that hopefully we will see Lake Rylands at least doubled in capacity in a very short period of time.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Reynolds. Certainly agree with that.
I can just mention
Councillor
to-
Newstead, you'd like to comment?
The $1 million also includes looking at a dam further down, which would be 26 gig, which would be fantastic. But I think the main thing at the moment is to get the wall done. A lot of people wonder why. I saw comments why it would have cost $1 million to do a study, but that's what happens these days. So hopefully we get the wall. Like I said, it's 2.2 metres and it doubles the capacity. Central Tablelands already owns all the land that it would take up. It wouldn't affect the Shore Road or the Neville Road, so that's a good thing, and the bridge there. So, yeah, let's hope that the government give us the go-ahead. And there is another thing, I can't think what it is. There's a third thing, but I can't think what it is.
Pipeline.
Pipeline, yeah, of course.
No, it's
But that was also included in the other study that,
800,000, yep.
yeah, the 800,000 that Water New South Wales were going to do, so, yeah, all good.
No, it's great. It's great they've been supported. Very important. That's a great water resource, and if we can value add it with the help of the state government, that would be very handy. Okay, councillors, any other questions or comments in regards to this report? If not, I'll put the motion. All in favour?
Aye.
Against? Declared carried. Okay, councillors, we do now have two confidential reports, and as such, in accordance with the Local Government Act 93 and the Local Government General Regulation 2005, in the opinion of the General Manager, the following business is of a kind as referred to in Section 10.2 of the Act and should be dealt with in a part of the meeting closed to the media and public. Item 24, land acquisition for road realignment Forest Reefs Road, and 25 is an update on a legal matter. I have a mover that we go into Committee of the Whole. Councillor Reynolds has moved that way. Councillor Ewan has seconded. I'll put the motion. All in favour? Against? Declared carried. Okay, councillors, we are now back into open council and we have resolved the two confidential. Item 24, page 2, the land acquisition for road realignment, Forest Reefs Road. Recommendation 1, that council approve the compulsory acquisition of lot 71 DP 1225816, registered 25th of August 2017. Making of an application to the Minister for Local Government and the Governor for approval of such compulsory acquisition. Upon acquisition, the land be classified as operational land under Section 31 of the Local Government Act 1993. Placement of council seal on all documentation associated with the compulsory acquisition for the realignment of Forest Reefs Road, including on any deed of agreement for compulsory acquisition pursuant to Section 30 of the Land Acquisition Just Terms Compensation Act 1991. I refer you to the last item, which was item 25, page 6, the legal matter, and the recommendation which was adopted, was that council receive and note the report. So councillors, that concludes our meeting for December. In fact, it's our last meeting for the year. On behalf of myself, I'd like to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And indeed, on behalf of my fellow councillors, I'd like to wish all the staff and indeed all the community, the people that have joined us to be on live streaming, I'd like to wish them all a very happy and safe Christmas and a very joyous New Year. Thank you. I now declare the meeting closed. Thank you.